It's another episode of Stand Up Explained. I am one of your hosts, Brandt Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater. I'm rocking out to our imaginary theme song.
Oh yeah, dude.
I don't know what it is, but
It's a
I'm
good one.
grooving to it.
We're gonna get one of those. Today on this episode, we are gonna discuss how to deal with bookers. One of our favorite things in the world.
The reason I got into comedy.
The
Emailing.
Yeah, I don't. How do we even start this?
I don't know. I wanted to talk about this because I feel like we might be a little different.
Okay.
We're a lot. I know we're a lot different in practice when it comes to this, but we're a little different in philosophy. And at least this is what I remember. And you tell me if I'm off base. But like, I think first of all, before I get into our differences, how to deal with bookers. Like, again, this is such boring advice, but like, all the caveats apply. Cart before the horse. Like, if you worry about your act, if you get funny enough, the booking part will take care of it. Like, you'll hear that. And I know that's like the worst advice. Nobody wants to hear that. But some of that is very much true. Like, if the best way to book yourself on shows is to do good on the show that you're on.
Yeah.
Then that usually is what has led to more shows and more opportunities than any sort of like package that I've emailed out cold to bookers.
Yeah. The funnier you are, the less you'll complain about bookers. And I think that's why we'll probably get into in a second that you're definitely funnier than me and you have a easier time.
That's my philosophy.
You have I think that's why we deal with bookers a little differently, because you have an easier time with bookers.
But the other thing I wanted to say before we go into it too much further, because I thought of this earlier today, but there's no one on earth who's not mad about how much they're booked. So you could see the comedian you think who works the most in the world and gets on all the best shows. They're mad that they're not booked enough. There's nobody working alive who doesn't think they should be on more stuff than they are.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
Well,
you're not having that problem uniquely to you. If that's what you're worried about, you're like, man, I never get booked. I never get on anything. It's like everybody feels that way.
We have a buddy that he had national TV. He was on NBC and a bunch of shit. And I remember when you got Conan, he was like, I want to get Conan. Andrew got Conan. I'm like, bro, you have 3 TV shows on NBC. Right. Like, what? You're mad that fucking. You're exactly right about that. No matter who they are, even Joe Rogan's probably like, I can't do the fucking Coliseum, or like, there's probably.
I promise you, even Conan. It's so funny you said Conan, because I bet even Conan was like, how come they didn't ask me to be on Mark Maron yet, or whatever? Like, I guarantee you that runs through their heads. Like it doesn't matter how big or famous you get. I don't think it's like,
no,
and I'm not booked enough. So those.
Yeah, this is. I'm interested. What is your strategy? Let's start with your booking strategy.
Well, okay. So the first of all, the best way to get booked, like we said, is be good. You know, it's not just be good, but be reliable. Be like, if someone's gonna book you, they gotta. First of all, they're worried about you showing up. That's like the number one thing that bookers are probably worried about. It's like, is this person just going to actually get there at the time I said? Then be good. Then, be nice. I think being nice is underrated.
Yeah.
Like, straight up just being a nice person to work with and tipping people and like all that stuff. You might not even be, because you're so worried about the show and all that stuff. Just being like nice to like remembering the names of the people in the sound booth, or the people, the waiters and waitresses and the bartenders, and tipping those people. And like that, I think goes a lot further than comedians realize sometimes.
Yeah. Cause there's a ton of people that can crush.
Yeah. And like when you ask,
you can both crush, but if the staff doesn't like one person and they really like the other one, it makes it an easy choice for the booker.
And a lot of times these bookers are not watching.
Yeah.
All they're waiting to hear is complaints, right? And they're either going to hear complaints from the audience, or they're going to hear complaints from their staff. And if you do well,
that's a great point. They don't want
that to the staff. And everyone's going to be like, the staff loves you and the crowd seems happy. I'm going to bring you back every time. But if you kill and then the staff hates you, they're like, well, I don't want that person. They sucked.
I think that's the best point you've ever made, that the bookers don't even watch most of the time. They are just waiting for complaints. So that's such a great advice.
They don't watch. So and then also that just made me think of something else. Booking strategy: know who the booker is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's not enough just to have a name or an email, or that, because sometimes you don't even know what sex the booker's name is, like Taylor, and you're like, hey, and you're calling him the whole time, but Taylor's a girl. That you got to have
You're
some
done.
information. You
Yeah.
got to know, what do they like, what kind of comedy they like, what comics they like, who works where they're booking a lot, and then have a strategy when you email them. Like, for instance, there's a booker in the Northwest. She's been doing it a long time, and I know what she's looking for. And I tell comics, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about your act. She likes clean comics, but she likes well-dressed comics. She wants you to wear a suit. I said, if you have any tape of you in a suit, send that. Don't worry about if you're killing, not killing. She'll see the suit, and immediately you're gonna headline. It's that simple for her. She
Yeah.
just wants you to. If you own a suit, you're a comedian in her book. So you would never think that, but if you just ask one or two questions about the person you're trying to get booked, you can find stuff like that out.
Yeah. That's great. Do your research. Well, the way you'll get booked the most is just from other comics vouching for you. The
Yeah,
old the email, and I've argued with people about this, the strategy of like, I know comics that were like, well, I'm just going to email them every single day to show that I'm interested. That does not work. That shows that you're fucking annoying.
right.
That is the worst strategy. I know bookers. We've booked before. Nothing is a turn. It doesn't show me how much you want to do the show because you're. I think what some people think is persistent and ambitious is annoying, and it's like a deal break.
Yeah. It's a slippery. I mean, it's like, it's interesting though, right? Because it is close. There's a fine line between being annoying and being overzealous and being desperate, and also worried about not bothering people, and then they just legitimately forget about you.
Yeah,
So what I think a strategy for that I like to do is, I like to ask them, like, how often, you know what I mean? Like, when do you want me to check in? Like,
yeah, yeah,
first of all, if you're there for a weekend, it goes good. You're like, I want to get back on the books, right? That's the first thing you think. I hosted, I featured, I headlined. How often do you bring headliners back? They're
yeah,
like a year and a half. Okay, great. When do you, how far do you book out? When should we put this down? And then whatever they say, 6 months. So I might put in my calendar right then, like, email so and so
yeah,
on this date, right? Or if they don't respond, then I would ask, like, how, if you're busy, like, I don't think that hurts to ask. Like, you say,
yeah.
like, how many, if I haven't heard from you, should I just keep emailing you, or just take it as a hint to just not? And they'll probably tell you, like, yeah, I get busy. I get like 10,000 of these a day. Just send one every couple weeks or something.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
I
they'll
think
they'll have no problem telling you that.
I think, yeah, I'm not saying cut off all communication and don't. I just don't like. I know guys that just do form letters that are just like, I send out
Right.
50 to the same letter to, like, if you communicate with them and well, you had a great point. The best way I get booked is the second I'm done with the week is try to rebook right then. You're fresh in
Mm-hmm.
their mind. When I usually, as I'm getting paid, they'll take me into an office or something. As they're giving me my check, hey, I had such a great week. Amazing club. Thank you for everything. Would love to get back. Do you have anything opened up? That is when you can, and then they can go, well, we're booked through here, but we'll start booking, let's say March. Okay, if I text you early March, is that cool? And then do just what you said. You put it in your notes. You send that early March. Then if they ignore that, then maybe a couple weeks later you send a follow up. Hey, I remember you said check with me in March. I'm just checking in. Would love the club. And I do. We'll probably get into it in a minute, but I do a lot of bullshit when I'm trying to get booked, but I don't know if we're ready
Yeah.
to talk about that yet.
Well, we can, like, so that would be like my first advice. Like, if you're worried about getting booked, like, the best way is to know exactly who it is you're talking to and what they're
Yeah.
looking for. So you pick the video. Obviously, you're going to send a video and a little bio information, whatever, and you also don't want to be like overly formal if it's someone who knows you really well. So it's
Yeah.
definitely know who you're sending it to. But then if it is somebody you don't know at all, you're like basically cold emailing them, it's not hard to find out a little information about them. Like,
Yeah.
just look at their calendar and talk to comics who've worked for them, and
Yeah.
then you can find all this stuff out. You can go, well, what do they like, what do they don't like, Like I remember there's this booker, guy for Zanies, Bert or something, and I met him at a festival, and he was so specific about what he wanted, like short, very to the point. He didn't want to, hey, how's it going? Hope
Yeah.
everything's going great. How's the club? Are you staying safe and healthy? Like he didn't want any of that shit. He's like, just what your availabilities, and say what, oh, this is good advice too. Say what it is you're getting, you want to be booked for. So
Uh-huh.
like if there's a club and you're like, well, I'd like to headline it, but I'd be happy to feature if that's the way I have to get in. Don't ever say that, what I just said out loud. Don't ever put that in an email, right? Like, and don't be ambiguous. Just be like, hey, I'd love to work at your club. Say, no, I want to feature at your club, or I want to headline these dates, right? Like be
Yeah.
very, very specific in what you're asking for. And then they might come back and say, well, we don't want to headline you, but would you be willing to feature? Then you can make a decision. But always be like super specific, I'd
Uh-huh.
say, on what it is that you want, and give the avails in that first email. Because that's the other thing we both, my other strategy that we've both probably experienced, but sometimes you'll have somebody in like an email chain of like 6-7 emails, and then they just drop off the map. There's nothing more frustrating than that, right? Like you're like so far down the road and then it's gone. So the sooner you can close the transaction, the better. So why waste time with get to know
Yeah.
you emails and all that stuff? Be like, this is who I am. This is what I want to get booked for. And this is when I'm available. Can we do one of these weeks? Right. And
Yeah.
then if they get back, you're basically done,
Yeah.
but you don't want to just be like, hey, I'm a comic. I'd love to work your club sometime. Hope it's all as well. It's like,
That's just going right in the trash.
right. It's
They're
going right
not
in the
gonna.
trash. And even if they reply, now you're still like 2 emails away from actually getting booked.
Yeah. Yeah. I would even on that, like, hey, I'm a good friend of Andrew Slater's. I worked with him. He even the vouch on the email help. Just a cold email of, hey, I'm a comedian.
Vouch.
See
Yeah.
it. See it. I don't think they're
Have
even gonna watch the
comics,
tape.
have comics vouch for you. And if you think, well, that's annoying, I don't want to ask comedians to do that, just be willing to do it yourself, and then you're not annoying. If you're willing to do it for other people and you've done it and you take the time to do it, then you shouldn't feel bad asking other comics to do it for you.
Yeah.
And like that's another reason though to not vouch for just anybody,
Yeah.
because that'll hurt you with bookers too. If you just like send anybody, if you want to be like, hey, I'm never going to say a bad word about another comic, which you don't have to, but you're like, I'm just going to vouch for everybody because they're nice and I want everyone to be nice for me. Bookers are going to pick up on that, like the first
Yeah.
bad person you send their way, and then all of a sudden they're not going to be interested in either who you're vouching for or who's vouching for you.
Well, didn't Helium have a rule? The Helium clubs, like, if you vouch for somebody and then they
No,
suck,
that
then
was the Harvey's. There's a smaller club in Portland called Harvey's, and if you wanted to work there, even starting out as a host, right, you had to get 3 different headliners to vouch for you. But if you bombed, all those headliners couldn't work the club for like a calendar year. So, which to me is crazy.
it's
Like
crazy.
I never worked Healing or Harvey's starting out in Seattle because I was like, well, I didn't have the balls to ask a headliner to put their livelihood. I didn't think I was
Yeah.
going to bomb, but like I wasn't going to take the chance. And then I wasn't ballsy enough to be like, will you? I mean, they probably would have. It would have been fine. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I never worked Harvey's because of that very rule.
Yeah. The vouch is the key, and you don't want to over vouch. I mean, I think the vouch in this day and age, it's so much. Everything I ever get booked is from somebody giving me an introduction or vouching for me. I think the old electronic press kits and all that shit, that shit doesn't work
Yeah.
anymore.
It's if you're gonna go that way, and again, I think I'm more bullish on like just cold emailing bookers and stuff because I like it because it doesn't cost me anything.
Hmm.
Like I and you're right, it's a numbers game. Like you're probably gonna have to send 50 to get one response, and it might not be the response you want because um if anybody's willing to book a comic off an just an unsolicited email is probably not the best paying gig.
Yeah.
But if it's a club, like if you can be strategic about it. First, It's a club you've always wanted to work. You know the email is good, and you know you can get a little information on the booker, right? Like you can see who's worked that club. You
Yeah.
can ask a few questions from your friends who've worked it, and then you can try to get vouchers. And at least there's two types of vouchers, right? Like if I ask you to help me out, like, hey, I want to work Brad Garrett's, right? There's two types. There's you just allowing me to put your name in the email. And then if they go back to you, you're not like, what? I didn't tell him he could say that, right? So
Yeah.
I get your permission. I say, hey, do you mind if I drop your name? That's a common way, right? And I think that like moves the needle like 3% towards
Yeah.
your favor. It's not strong because they don't know. They're not, 9 times out of 10, they're not going to do the legwork and actually reach out to, hey, this guy Andrew said
Yeah.
you would recommend him for the club. Is that true? They're not going to do that. They're
Yeah.
just going to
That's law.
assume that either it's true or they're going to more likely just assume they probably just picked 3 names on my calendar. So the second type of vouch is like if I actually get you to write the booker for Brad Garrett's an email to say, hey, you know who'd be great? Andrew. He's going to email you soon, or he might have just emailed you.
Yeah. Or
Make it a
can I give
coordinated
him your
vouch.
email? Can I
Right.
give him your email? Hey, my friend Andrew, he's great. I think he'd be a great fit for the club. He's been on Conan. He has a dry bar special. I think he would just be a great, and he's just a good dude. Can I have him? Do you mind if I give him email and have him reach out?
And that probably moves the needle like 50% compared to like 3%, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
But not everybody's going to be willing to do that. That's the thing. It's like it's a rare. That's like actual work that person has to do, and they might not even be doing that for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, comics can be lazy, so I would say any vouch is better than no vouch. But if you can get them to write their own independent email and just go, and just if you ask, you have to be willing to do it yourself for people you think would be good. I think that's the only fair way to do it. But you could even trade like, hey, I'll help you get in at XYZ if you help me get in.
That's the way to do it right there. Because there's the clubs that you can get in that other people can't. And here's the thing, just for all the comics watching, the young comics, don't ask other comics for like contacts. Like, I don't like that. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you work Brad Garrett's. Can I get that email to work there? I'm like, there's a different way of going about it. Like maybe go, hey, you work Brad's. Do you think I could work? Is there any way to, first of all, you can't get into Brad's. It's one of the hardest clubs to get in because they book like a year out. So people hit me up all the time. Hey, how do I get in Brad's? And then I'll tell them, or I would much rather someone reach out to me and go, hey, what would you suggest? I'd like to work Brad's. What are your thoughts? And instead of people that are like, hey, you work Brad's, what's the email? How do I, who do I, I'm like, no,
I remember this too. Someone saying this once, like throw in a, how are you doing? Or just like, there's nothing more just alarming than getting like a Facebook message that says, what's the email for LA Comedy Club? And you're like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
I've spoken to you in 6 years, but hey, sure. Let me send you this information. Like, you got to warm them up a little bit of foreplay before you just come out and ask. And it might be obvious, it might be transparent what you're doing, but so what? Try and be nice.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, it's
and everything I think we said, everything so far, what we're applying this all to is like club. The way we've been talking is like how to deal with bookers of comedy clubs, right? Now there's this whole other world. Oh, go ahead.
I said, let's go back to like bars or your local showcases, which I think is a pretty easy book. You just go, you need to go support. If you want to go to be on a show, go support that show. Because
and like, again, there's so many reasons to do that, right? First of all, it's hard to do. It's hard sometimes. It shouldn't be that hard when you're starting out, but sometimes when you're new in comedy, while you're like, I'm really going to go, especially in LA and New York, I'm really going to go hang out at the show and whatever. But it helps not just for them to see you there and it puts them in your mind like, oh yeah, we could have Brandt was there last night. We had a couple beers, whatever. But it also, again, it gives you more information as to what is the show, what are they looking for, who books it, what do they like, how can I approach them in an email or a text or whatever. just the more information you have about the person it is you're asking the favor from, the better off you're going to do. And
Yeah.
hanging out at that shows never hurts.
No. Well, and you could just get lucky that someone doesn't show up. I've got
Well, that
opportunities by
too.
just going there to support in hopes of building a rapport with the booker and then having someone not show up. Or the booker, something happens, there's 50, I'm standing in the back with the comics. Oh, they need to move in 50 chairs. Oh, I got it. Just little stuff like that, which people might say is kissing ass, but it's a little, but it's also just, I have no problem with like help me in the moment, and people will appreciate that. If you're just there supporting the show, the other comics will like it, the booker will like it. I mean, I
Yeah.
always like it. For me, it's something I do now, whenever I headline, if someone just shows up to watch, I shouldn't announce it like this, but if someone just shows up to watch, I'll usually try to give them a guest set just as a reward for being there,
Right.
without asking me for a guest set or something. If someone's just like, hey man, I came to watch you, because it's happened to me so many times with fucking huge celebrities, like I remember one time I just went to see, I knew Craig Robinson's opener. So I just peeked my head in the green room and I was talking to Todd, his opener, and Craig Robinson was just sitting over chilling. I don't even think he was paying attention. Then he was just like, hey man, are you funny or what? I was like, yeah, I'm funny. Because all right, well, we're going to find out this next show. You want to do like 6 or 7? I was like, yeah, for sure. A sold out room, like 700 people. It was fucking, and that just happened from being there,
Right. And if you can, so that's the other thing too. It's like, what else are you going to do? If it doesn't cost you anything, if it's in your city, and you can get there, it's just one more, and you don't have your own show that night, then why aren't you doing it? You really got to ask yourself, then why am I not doing it?
Yeah.
Is it my own ego? Is it my own pride? Is it that I don't even like comedy that much? I mean, you should want to be doing this,
Yeah.
and if it's purely just strategic, if it's purely just like straight, I'm going to do this so they book me on the show, that's a reason to do it too.
Yeah. I'm not mad at that. I mean, it's part of the thing. I mean, and I would say it's better to go. I mean, we say all the time, it's reps. You want to get on stage as much as you can. But if there's a shit open mic and there's like a monthly showcase, so many times I'll be like, oh, I'm going to the showcase. And someone's like, oh, well, maybe we'll meet up after. I'm going to this mic. I'm like, fuck that mic. You should be at this showcase.
Right.
There's a great headliner. People are there. Comics are there. You're going to, what we've said this whole time, the key to getting booked is people vouching for you. And you're going to get more vouchers. I'll vouch for somebody who came and just watched me. If let's say me and you, or two people there's 2 people that are close to even, and they both are trying to get into the club at Comedy Works here. If one of them comes and watches my shows and tells me I did a good job, and I'm going to vouch for that person more than somebody who's sitting I mean, that's just human nature.
Well, that's the balance. So that what you presented there, though, I think that's another area we've literally had that conversation in LA, and we've probably went our separate ways and then met up later. But I would have aired more times on getting on stage than going to hang out at shows. But I don't know, you might be right. Like it's just a trade-off you have to make.
Yeah.
At some point. You're going to be faced with that decision at some point, like do my own mic or hang out, put in FaceTime, try and get booked on a better show eventually. And I don't think there is like a right answer.
No. No, you want to balance.
Want to make sure you're doing enough
of both.
And if you find out, if you're like, man, I'm writing a lot of jokes, I'm getting really funny, and I feel like I'm way funnier and I'm never getting on good shows, you might have your answer. Take a few open mics off and go hang out at those shows, right?
Yeah.
Or vice versa. You're like, man, I'm getting booked on all these good shows, but then I keep like bombing or like I'm never as good as anybody who are on the show. Then you might have that answer.
Yeah.
Maybe hit a few mics before you know what I mean? So like,
no, because there's definitely hangout guys that are just known in the scene, like, oh, that's hangout guy. He gets on the shows because he's. So there is a you want a balance of it, but what I would say is if there's one show that wherever you live or wherever scene you're in, there's probably one show that you really want to do. And even if it's a goal down the road, I would start putting FaceTime in at that shows. Because if you really want to do the show, it's probably a great show anyway.
Right.
You don't really want to do a shit show. But like for instance, here they have the Grolics, these 3 great comics. They do a monthly show, and it's everybody's big goal to get on it. But if I was one of these guys, if I was a young female or male comic here, I would start going to those shows. They're like $8, putting a little FaceTime. They see you there supporting. You're watching great comedy, which will probably make you a better comedian. And then do open mics the other 6. I mean, that's like a monthly. You know what I mean? I would,
Right.
if there's one you really want to do, I would go to that show, figure out the booker is, and consistently be there when you can, and let the booker see that you're there. You don't have to talk to them for 20 minutes or just, and then go, hey, that show was great. Or I can't believe you even buttering up a booker. I can't believe you got that person on the show. Man, he fucking killed it. And they love that
Yeah.
shit. They have
And the
egos.
same, and what you're saying, the same goes for like not clubs like all over the country, but your local, the club like that you want to get in. So in Denver,
Yeah.
it's Comedy Works. In Portland, it's Helium, right? It's like the club that you want to do, and then be the regular there. Okay,
Yeah.
you're not on anywhere else. Go hang out. Go hang out at the bar. Watch the show from the back or whatever. Say hi to everybody. If you want to be in, go.
Yeah.
You're not booked and you wish you were booked more. Go hang out. Like it can be a little intimidating. You're like, I know for me personally, sometimes what would stop me from going to either shows or clubs like that in Los Angeles was like, I needed a reason to be there. I was like, I don't want to be like a phony. I don't want to just be hanging out and not have a reason. And if I could give anybody any advice, it'd be like, drop that as fast as you can. You're a comic, right? You have a
Yeah.
reason to be there. You're hanging out because you like comedy and you want to see comedy. You want to, and don't worry about the like, well, are they going to think I'm just hanging out because I want to get on the show? It's like, no one's thinking about that. No one's thinking about you. They just, if you're in the room and you're hanging out, it's going to increase your odds of getting booked. That's just,
Yeah.
if you're hanging out at a club a lot, it's way more likely that you're going to get in at that club than them just hearing about you at all these other places. Like, hey, we should bring in that Brandt. I've heard Brandt's been killing it all over town. We've never seen him here, but I think
Yeah.
we got to get him in. It's like they're not doing the research like that. They're not,
Yeah.
the scouts aren't reporting back like that.
And get a comedy buddy that also has that goal, and then go together. If you have because I think we all have that insecurity of going somewhere by ourselves, even a comedy show. We talked about it in the beginning, but there's people that probably want to do that same show and say, hey, you know what? You want to go grab some dinner, or you want to grab a drink, or let's go to this show. You see who's on this show. Let's go this week. And I agree with you. When we'd go as twos, it was much different than just showing up by yourself.
Way easier.
It's so just, and I'm sure you're going to have no problem finding somebody who wants to go to the show with you.
So I think like the big like things getting booked, it's like, it's hang out at, that never hurts. You're not always going to be able to do it because sometimes you're trying to get booked in places that aren't local. But if it's local, hang out for sure.
Yeah.
Know who it is that you're sending an email. Know them. At least know about them. Know what they want. Know what they're looking for, and try your best to present yourself as what it is that they're looking for. If they're some people are credit whores. Some people love credits. Some people, the credits go so far, and so really play up those credits, right? Like, and you're like, I don't have any credits. It's like, well, just stretch to the best of your ability the credit, because some people aren't going to give a shit about credit. Some people,
well, nobody really fact checks credit. Don't go crazy. Don't say
you have them, but I would be careful about like straight up fabricating, because like then you get a reputation.
There's different ways to fabricate. Don't say I did Letterman when you didn't do Letterman. But if you wanted, if you did something, if you were like on Fox somehow, if you did a commercial that was I mean, I don't know. I know there's people, I know when I started, like we shot these Fox commercials in Vegas that just ran locally. But then on my thing, it said, as seen on Fox, or like, but that was just for credit whores. But they're not going to check. Like, you can't, you should know the game of comedy. You should never disrespect a credit. Like, you can't say, I did the Tonight Show when you didn't do the Tonight Show.
So like, and then like on the flip side though, sometimes you're going to email somebody who doesn't want to hear about your credits. That doesn't mean anything to them. And then, so it's like knowing like little things like that can go a long way. And you're like, well, how am I ever going to know stuff like that? Ask people, ask people who work for them. Be like, do you know them at all? Like what moves the needle on them? They like clean comics. They like dirty comics. They like comics. Like they said, that book on the Northwest, Just wear a suit. It's that simple. You wear a suit, you're gonna get. That sounds so stupid to say out loud, but it's basically true.
Yeah.
So like, there's I'd say knowing the person that you're emailing and as best as you can, and then
Well,
you always want to like get the best tape yes, of course. I feel like that doesn't even need to go
yeah.
said, but like it's way easier to get booked if you have a great tape. And how do you get a great tape? Well, you film yourself basically every time.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Because
increase your odds.
you just need one great tape.
Right. But yeah, so have a good tape and headshot, blah, 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 blah. But like the things nobody talks about are like the little intricacies of bookers, and they're all different, and they're all like have their own weird game. They might not even watch your tape, they might go off of the way
Well, I'll
you
tell you what I do.
email.
I'll tell you what I do. Some of my tricks that would lead you to not watch my tape. So, for instance, like I'm from Wyoming, and so if Wyoming's doing a basketball game or a football game somewhere or something that I would maybe even like to go to, or Andrew, I think I really learned this from you actually. Then you go, hey, I don't know if you have an opening for this date. I'm coming out for the football game. There'll be a ton of Wyoming people there, so I think I could bring in
Yeah.
50, 60, 75 people. And I don't even have a ticket to the game. I mean, do I want to go to the game? Sure. But can I afford to just go to the game? No. But if I could set up that show with the promise of bringing a bunch of Wyoming people, or I've said, there's times when I'd be like, I know a person that runs a singles group in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they said we could at least get 65 to come. And then you can do the old Hollywood trick. But what everyone did to me, it's like, oh shit, something happened. Once you're booked, then I'll say this. We have different strategies. I think once you're good, just do whatever you can to get booked, as long as you know you're going to back it up. Because however you get in, I do weird shit to just try to get in, because I believe once I'm in, I'm going to do a good show. And then like you said, bookers, they're not going to get complaint from staff. They're not going to complain from audience. They're happy. But I always say, just fucking get in. If you're going to do a good job. The
fastest way to get in is that second type of vouch that we're talking about. That is like, if you're like, how am I ever going to get in? I've tried everything. If you haven't tried that second type of vouch, where you're getting someone to actually email on your behalf who's worked there, not just using their name, but getting them to do it.
Yeah.
Then you haven't tried everything. Because that is if you tried that and you still can't get in, then maybe you just can't get in. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
That is the number one way to get in. And then like what you're saying, this promise of crowd, I've definitely done that with Seahawks games and been like, there's gonna be all these Seahawks fans there. I think I can tie in with the local tailgaters. And it was all like vaguely.
But sometimes it worked, didn't it?
I tried. Yeah. And I would bring it up, and who knows how many actually came, and usually at least a few, so I could point out, as long as I could point out a couple people in Hawks jerseys or whatever, then they just kind of assumed there was a group.
Well, it goes back to what you said originally. The bookers, that's why I loved what you said earlier. Most of the time, the bookers aren't even going to watch. The bookers are going to care about complaints. And if you don't have, this one could get you a few complaints. If you promise you can bring 75 people and have 7, okay, then maybe you do have a complaint. But I also think what you said is perfect. Once you just get in, just be cool to everybody, treat everybody with respect that works there, and then just crush your set, and then you're going to have no problem.
Well, the other thing, just in a little bit different than what you're saying, but it goes in that same vein, is like giving them actual dates that aren't like whenever. So if you go, hey, I'm available like June to 2020 to like July 2021, any of those days, like that's useless to them. They're like, okay, this person's available all the time, so I don't have to, there's no sense of urgency. But if you go, hey, here are some weeks that I could do.
Mm-hmm.
April 14th through the 17th, May 12th through the 15th, January 3rd. And if you just give, then they're like, oh, of those weeks, do any of those work? And if one works, they go, oh, great. If they like you, then okay, how about that week? Done.
Yeah,
give
100%.
them specific weeks. And if you have way too many open weeks, it doesn't hurt to just limit the number of weeks you're offering. You don't have to offer them every week that you're open, because it sometimes looks bad.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. You should pick two or three at the most. I would say 3 at the most, but I usually go 2. I do just what you said. Hey, but I always say I'm coming for some reason. Or if there's somebody that's like, hey, I want you to do a show in my town. I'll say, hey, I have friends in town. I'm going to be out this exact weekend. And if there's not a hotel available, I can crash with them or whatever. Or sometimes they'll suggest that, well, we can bring you in, but we can't give you a hotel. Okay. But the fact that I say I'm coming out there to see friends or something, then they assume, okay, well, we can book this guy because he's going to have a place to stay or something. But all that's extra bullshit. But the dates part is key for sure.
Yeah, I'd say give them. Yeah, you want
I wouldn't go more than
specifics.
3. I would say, hey, I'm April, because then it makes it look like you're busy.
Right. And it just creates a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
It means, if you don't reply to this email in 2 weeks, those dates might not be available.
Yeah.
If you say you're available whenever, then there's no reason for them to reply to you at any point.
Because you're going to be there whenever they need you.
Because then they could wait till the day of, and then somebody doesn't show up. It's like, well, I could still get Brandt.
Yeah.
And I still might not try because I might try to get somebody else. So
yeah, because I can have him whenever. Yeah, no, that part is the dates. Definitely, I definitely saw more progress doing that when I would say, hey, I'm coming this week for this exact date, and then then I would say for the football game or whatever, and then that definitely helped. When you just say, hey, I'm available whenever, book me whenever, they'll book you never.
And then my only other thing that I think I want to make sure I said before we move on is don't put them on. This works for anybody, but for bookers especially, don't put them on a pedestal. A lot of times, especially if they like book something really coveted, like the Tonight Show, or they book like something you really some festival you desperately want. Sometimes what we do, at least I do this, is I put them on this pedestal and then I make it like, I shouldn't even go and talk to them, or I can't treat them like a regular person, like I would everybody else. But the more you can treat them like you would anybody, just a regular person, be nice, but just be nice. Like they're not the president.
Yeah.
They're not a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. They have a very middle class, normal job probably, and they're probably just a really normal person. They're a VIP to you because you want what they have to offer really badly, right? But they're not famous. They don't have this crazy lifestyle that they have no time for you. They're just a regular person. So just treat them like a regular person. The more you can treat them like a regular person, the more they'll probably book you. The people they don't want to book are the ones who are like groveling around their feet, because then they're like, that they don't deserve, or they're not on the level they need to be. So just the more you can treat people regular, honestly, it takes you so much further.
Yeah. Well, they see the confidence. If you're not grappling to them, you're like, oh, this. Right. I mean, the confidence is such a turn on in every aspect.
There's no need to grovel when you really think someone. I forget if it was you telling me this or somebody else, but when you think like, even the person who books like the most prestigious shows and festivals in the world, like whoever that is, who you think in your head, they probably make like $65,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's not like they're Warren Buffett. You don't have to like treat them as this crazy. They're not out there going on jet skis and, Italy and stuff. They're just a regular person. So treat them that way.
But don't treat them too that way, because I've made that mistake of my.
Well, yeah. Well, don't be rude or dismissive. I've been dismissive a few times, both on purpose and on accident. And that's not good either. I'd
flat out tell, because I've had a couple bookers. Nothing makes me madder when they're like, hey, we need to get you in. They reach out to me and they go, hey, we want to get you in. And then I respond, oh, I'd love to, these are my dates, whatever. And then they ignore that. And then I respond, go, hey, just reaching back out. You said we were trying to get in. And then they act like I'm bothering them. And then that makes me fucking so mad. It's like, you sent this to me. It was just like a tease of like,
right.
So I've had that happen a couple of bookers. We went back and forth, and then I've done it 2 or 3 times, and I think I'm 0 for 3, but I think I'm one for 3, where I just write back, hey man, just either get me a date or tell me to go fuck myself. Let's quit doing these emails. Either I'm going to work for you or I'm not. And if you tell me to go fuck myself, I'm totally cool with that. And if you give me a date, that'd be great because I want to work your club. But what are we doing here? And then, 1 for 3 on those.
That's not bad. 1 for 3 is not bad on booking emails, honestly.
But honestly, for me, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'll book you. Fuck it. I like this kid.
Right. But then again, that also speaks to like, know who you're talking to, right? Like,
yeah,
you probably have a sense based on who that email is going to, how they're going to respond to something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think all 3 of them were comics who are now bookers, which is another fucking problem in itself. But I think I wouldn't do that to like the lady that wants you to wear a suit and shit like that. Like, well, so I guess again, it is know who,
Yeah.
because I knew what I was doing as
Know who
reckless
you're
as
addressing, but yeah. But then also sometimes you get to a certain point, you're like, it's time to take a big swing.
Yeah.
Because nothing's working anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, why go back and forth? I'd rather spend my time working towards something that'll actually happen than fucking some of these. I mean, we haven't said it. Well, it's probably a bad thing to say, but most bookers are fucking awful. I'm just gonna say it the more that I got a little fired up right now. They're just fucking awful. And as Andrew was saying, you shouldn't put them on a pedestal, but a lot of them think they're on a pedestal and they love the power they have because most of them want to be comics anyway, and they love to fucking control. We dealt with that shit in LA so many times. These fucking nerds that they would run the best shows, and you'd be like, oh, I gotta go kiss this fucking dork's ass for.
But the way it works in LA, like the worse the show, the bigger the ego for the book. So it's like the show you want to do the least is like the one that's hardest to deal with. And some bar show with 8 people on average in attendance, and then you'll email and be like, yeah, try in a year and a half, and you're like, what are you talking about? That's the thing. They're trying to improve their show. They're like, that's all they have.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it from their perspective, it's like, well, what's the currency? No one comes to our show. Nobody likes our show. It's not popular. But the only currency we have is that we make it hard to get on for comics. And the harder it is to get on for comics, the more it seems like a get.
Yeah.
If a booker tells you can come do the show anytime you want, and they tell that to too many comics, then that show is not going to have any prestige. So it is a game in a certain way, at least in that sense. In a comedy club world, it's definitely more of a business. But in the like LA stand-up scene or New York stand-up scene, it's more of a game, and it's like we can kind of make our show seem really prestigious by making it really hard for anyone to get on.
Yeah.
But
like the problem I have with bookers is they know how much they do have all the power, and they know how much we love what we do. So they just can treat us like shit. Like we're drug addicts. We just come back they just know.
But it's interesting when you say they have all the power, right? Because they really don't. They have the power over a lot of comics, some comics, but they also are beholden. So like if we're doing a show, if you can say, if you're a booker, right? And you think I have all the power to book anybody in this town I want. But then John Mulaney walks in and says, I want to do 45 minutes. You've got to John Mulaney has all the power now.
Well, yeah.
Right? All your power's gone. And if you actually have the balls to tell him no, to say no, and you're not going to let him go on and do your show, well, one, it's probably suicide for your show.
You'll have
Two, you'd
no
be
more
like
power.
A legend forever. So I'd love to hear about that. But like, they only have power in the sense that they can kind of control at the margins, but really their job is to just put up the most famous people possible. It's not a complicated game, and to make the lineups diverse and all that stuff too. But like ultimately they're trying to get as many credits and as much Twitter followers on that stage as possible.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. It's not rocket science, at least in this is a whole different scene kind of what we're talking about. And what you're saying can be so frustrating too. Like I've had that happen a million times where people reach out and they say, hey, we'd love to have you, give us some dates. And you give them dates, don't hear back. Send another email, don't hear back. And it's almost like you're like, oh, was this just a trick? It was a trap. Like the only way I could have gotten booked is if you reached out, say we wanted some dates, and me to just not reply, and then to make you even hornier to have me or something. And then, and that was the way. Did I fail some test? Because there are a lot of weird power games going on at all times. And
well, I heard a comic, Felipe Esparza, one time, he said, he goes, man, if a booker's like, hey man, send me your avails, and then the comic like sends it the next day, that comic sucks. he's a shitty comic. That means he's like too excited. That means he sucks. Because a real comic, he might email your avails in like 2 or 3 days, and it made me laugh so hard that he's like, oh no, if he's like ambitious, and that means he sucks.
Yeah.
which I don't know if that's true, but I
I
do
don't know if
think,
that's true either, but there's some truth in it as far as the perception. You might not suck. You might just be
yeah,
like eager to work, but the perception will be you're too eager.
yeah,
So it's a weird dance. It's like dating or something. There's always
yeah.
somebody always holds the upper hand
Well,
and
yeah, that's the thing. They're always playing hard to get, but then if somehow you could flip it, then you control. You're right about that. When you flip it, what we keep talking about, and
and
why big
every episode we ended on, but
just
if you
just
can
get
put
the
butts in
fan.
seats, none of this matters.
Yeah, let me tell you that. Once you can draw it, you don't even deal with the booker anymore. You deal with
No,
the
you're the
owner.
booker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You pay.
You book yourself and you book the people opening for you, and then that's the end of the game.
But that's the truth. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess in conclusion, I don't know. Learn. I think everything you said. Learn about the booker. Learn get some back info on who you're dealing with. I think the best advice from this episode is that they're probably not going to watch. They're just looking for complaints. So if you can limit your complaints, and that's from wait staff, bartenders, door guy, any of that. You want to keep your complaints. I mean, that should just be
Yeah.
simple advice. And then
Be nice.
yeah.
Be nice. Get a vouch. Try and get that like extra vouch where they're actually emailing for it. That's just going to go so much farther.
Or they'll bring you in and let you do a guest spot, or
Right.
I mean, we didn't talk about it on here, but I think the vouch. There's certain guys like for instance, our boy at LA Comedy Club. I've been friends with him for 10 years. People ask me, hey, how do I get booked there? I said, you go fucking talk to him face to face. You send him emails. He's my friend. We had a fight one time because I was like, bro, I emailed you. I'm not some fucking random dude. I'm your friend. And he just was like, man, it's just overwhelming. I never thought for him how overwhelming all those emails are. But if you get in, once again, why you go support the shows, but a lot of these bookers, first of all, they're going to have, it's so much easier to tell you no over email. They're not going to,
truth.
you're going to book a lot more face to face. I promise you. People
that's
that would.
The other thing you can kind of learn too. It's like a question I get asked a lot, and from comics who are like savvy, who know what they're doing, and also a question I now ask a lot. It's like, well, okay, thank you for their email, but how do they? Because some people communicate mostly on one app or the other, right? So like, they're more of a Facebook Messenger. Like, here's their email, but they'll respond quicker on Facebook. Or how fast do they usually get back to you on text? Like, should I just text? Some bookers just want to text,
Yeah.
If you can get, the closer you can get to their preferred means of communication, because some emails just exist just to give comics as like a diversionary tactic. It's like a smoke screen. They're like, book me at comedyclub.com. Like, that's the email that sucks up all the bad ones so that they can focus on the other email that they actually use.
Yeah, that's great.
Don't just send 50 to one email and never gets a response and then assume they hate you. Just the first thing you should assume is that no one is reading any of these.
Yeah. No, that's another great point. Like, because they definitely do have their preferred, preferred method of communication. But
yeah,
I think the face to face is how I always do it. And like, for instance, when I moved here, the face to face of just being out at shows and and we'll talk about this on another episode. Having a relationship as a comic is hard because it feels like you're out just fucking around, but that's when shows and stuff are done. So I get it.
Like
you're
politics.
like, well, I can't.
I mean,
yeah,
the real things happen. The real business being done like at 11:30 at night over drinks. They're not doing shit during the day in the office. That's for show. The real business gets done.
Yeah.
In the network,
which is going to be hard to explain to your partner why you have to be out till midnight on a Tuesday, but that's honestly, that's how it works. I've booked and been booked so many times when people are just drunk hanging out. Like, man, this is fun, man. You want to do my show on Thursday? Oh yeah. Well, okay, cool. Let me put it in my phone. Booked. I could have emailed that person 1,000 times. And like you said, I think it just went to some imaginary booker email in the sky. So just go out, be cool, support, be funny, and
be nice.
Yeah. And goes back to what we talked about on other shows.
Do a little bit of research.
And book your own shows, and then you can trade shows.
That too.
Or trade vouch. I like what you said about trade vouch too, because I have done that with comics. Like, hey, that's so much better to say, hey man, I'm in pretty good at this show, and you're in at that show. Anyway, you want to vouch for each other or help?
Oh yeah, no, totally. And something like if someone asks you, this is the thing I'm trying to do more often now. But like, let's say you come to me and like, how do I get in at Helium? And I tell you, and I'm like, and you know what? I'll write the guy an email right now. I immediately, it sounds kind of shitty to do, but it's what you should be doing. Is I should just like do a quick scan of your calendar and go,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Also, looks like you're going to be there. I've been dying to get into that club. Can you help me out? And then how could they say no?
Yeah.
How could they say no? You know what I mean? And then I know that sounds kind of shitty, like, oh, you're only doing it, scratch my. But man, it's so hard to get booked. You should not feel ashamed.
Yeah. And you're
to do
doing
stuff
something
like
for
that.
them. So a scratch my
Right.
back, scratch theirs is much better than just, hey, let me scratch your, like,
Right.
to vouch for somebody's a thing. So I think that's fair. And it's a good test if they're like, hey, vouch for me. And then you go, hey, vouch for me. And they're like, I can't. I go, well, I can't vouch for you.
Right. Right. Then what are we doing? Then
Yeah. I'm not your agent. You vouchers, like, because that will happen. Once you start booking shows, even now, if I book something, inevitably, if I put something on the calendar, somebody will fucking hit me up and be like, hey, man, how do I do that show?
Right.
And if I like them, I'll tell them. And if I don't like them or they're not ready, because that's a hard thing to tell somebody, oh, you're not good enough, which would usually be somebody, I know it's embarrassing now. The people I reached out to young in my career to try to get on shows. Like I tried to get on Largo in Los Angeles because I just didn't know the game. Like it was like the biggest show in the world. I had no business emailing them from Las Vegas saying, hey, it's like, know the booker, know the game, know where you're at. Like, I just look back and go, God, what was I thinking?
Yeah. But I mean, also, you don't want to have too much self-awareness either. It's a fine line. Because like if I've been crippled the other way where I go, oh, I'm not good enough for that, and then you watch people with no self-awareness get things they have no business getting. You're like, well, why did they get that? Because they didn't know any better.
Yeah.
Because they convinced themselves and everybody else. So don't, have a vague idea of where you should be and at what level and stuff, but err on the side of not holding yourself back, I'd say. And if you're not
I
ready,
agree.
if you're not ready, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
If you're not ready, they're not going to put you on there, and if they do and you bomb, then you probably the last time you'll do it. So,
but you did it.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So,
I think we covered it.
In conclusion, vouch is the key, and then be cool.
And all those other keys we said.
We have a lot of keys.
Go back and listen. We're not,
Yeah, you guys know what to do. We'll vouch for you. We promise. Just shoot us an email. What club do you want to do? We got you.
Maybe. Okay.
All right. Is that it for this episode?
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, that is how to deal with bookers. Hopefully that helped. Please subscribe, rate, review if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify. Hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We'll have new episodes every week. If you have something you'd like us to talk about, we're probably going to get to it, but feel free to leave your questions or suggestions in the comments, and you can reach out to either of us at any time. And that's it for this week. I'm Brandt Tobler.
I'm Andrew Slater.
Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
See ya.